On today's show, it is part 2 of 2 with myself and Tyler Jones, good friend of the Locked on Hawks podcast. We'll get into all manner of things right now.
You are Locked on Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1961 of the Locked on Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Thursday into Friday here in late April. Today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year with Monarch Money. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked on Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcast. That includes YouTube, Apple, Spotify, etc. And we appreciate you listening and telling your friends about the podcast. If you missed it, this is actually part 2 of 2. So part 1 with myself and Tyler Jones is available in the same podcast feed right now. I recommend beginning with part 1. It's a more linear conversation that way, but listen to that one first, then come back to this one. But here we go with part 2 with myself and Tyler Jones. One of the challenges, and there's a reason we talked about it so much, whether it's by myself or with you or Glenn, all year long, it was always going to be a challenge to do both things at the same time, like the Hawks tried to do. They admitted it on the record throughout the season. They admitted at the end of the season, it was hard. It was always going to be hard to both try to retool and develop and also try to win, because Quinn Snyder is a win-now coach. He got paid as a win-now coach. He operates in his mind like a win-now coach. He appreciates development. He loves the G League. He'll talk to you about the G League all day long. He loves development, but he's still a veteran-laden, I'm leaning on my bets, trying to win games coach. And to your point, they didn't have that super strong executive to be like, you know what, Quinn, play the young guys here a little bit more. Like, that's one example, but it's also a good example. And they didn't. And look, I got a little bit of pushback on my Mercy podcast for people around the team, but not a lot. I think I was expecting maybe to get a little, and I got a little bit about what I said. And I basically said, Landry didn't have the juice of a traditional executive. And I still mean it. I say that intentionally the way I said it. He was a GM. He was still the guy at the top of the masthead, right? But he was also a guy who kind of stumbled into the job, like into the head job. Landry is more than qualified to be the number 2 in a front office right now. Like, by the way, Landry's younger than me. Landry's 36 years old. He played in the NBA. Obviously, there's a bit of a speed up when you're a former NBA player who went to Stanford and knows a lot of stuff. He's a smart guy, but he kind of came in the weird door to get to the organization, and then got elevated, but only kind of elevated when Travis was ousted. They didn't give Landry the president of basketball operations job. He's the GM. They went out and spent. I've heard I won't say the figure. I've heard they spent a lot of money to get Auntie Salah from Golden State a year ago, like more than that job usually would command, is what I was told multiple times, multiple sources. Honestly, might be the highest paid assistant GM in the league until right now. I don't know if that's true, but it was a lot of money from what I heard. Right. Then you got Kyle Korver. You got an active owner, which I don't like, but it's just the reality. Tony's very active, very hands-on. You got Nick Ressler, who Hollinger went up again this week, is always in the mix, looming somewhere. And then you got Quinn. And then you got Chris Grant and another former agent in the front office. How many names did I just say of people in this front office? Right?
It's a lot of names, and these a lot of names lead to a lot of leaks. At
least the leaks. It also just leads to I think that being collaborative is good. Some of that's tech speak. Landry kind of talks in like a tech bro world. But
Silicon Valley based.
It can be good. It really can be good to be that way. But in the end, you need to have one person that's you know what? Nah. I'll gather the information and I'm making the decision. And at least I believe that's probably the best way to do this in this setting. In a professional basketball team, I would want one person. You want that one person to listen to everybody. You want to take opposing viewpoints, all that stuff, but it's that person's call and not the owner, because the owner is not a basketball guy. It's the owner's money, so there's always a hard navigation. And some of the best executives, you hear people talking about people around the league. Some of the best executives are the ones that can tell their owner and convince their owner to leave them alone. That's the thing. There's a really interesting dance you have to do as a top executive to be like, hey, owner, I need your money, but not your input on basketball. And that's a hard conversation to have with a billionaire. You know what I mean? Tony Ressler made a lot of money and is a very confident individual. Tell that guy that he has to go away. That's a tough sell, but it has to be that way. It has to be. And then, so anyway, that's a lot of background. But you're right. I think on the court, it does manifest. We'll never know how much of that is just Quinn being Quinn versus there not being an executive to tell him. But there were inconsistencies, and there were always going to be. But that organizational, like top down, like there's a reason why sometimes you would prefer that it goes top down to where you know what you're doing. And I cover baseball too. We joked about it earlier. Not everybody loves the fact that front offices do a lot more than they used to in baseball. Managers don't managers don't like that much. But hey, that's kind of just the way it is. And especially baseball's even easier to track because it's a one versus one events business. Basketball is analytics too, but there's a lot more going on in basketball. Like a lot of more diverging math things and all these things. So anyway, it's interesting that he got fired when he did. What you said earlier is perfect. I'm not sure if I said it that way, but I thought it was fine that he got fired. I thought it would have been fine if he didn't get fired. I used the term deserved. I got nothing to do with it because if you just go on the track record, Landry Fields was the GM for 2 years. There's nothing in that 2 years that's like, you know what, you got to fire that guy. There's not one thing in there. There's some stuff I didn't like. There's some stuff I didn't love, but there's one great transaction. The Dyson trade is a grand slam transaction. And if you want to give Landry the credit for that, like, cool. He should. That's fine.
Yeah, but like I think Hollinger, if people read his piece in Athletic, like he pointed out, he was part of the group who was in on Dejounte Murray, like in on originally trading for Dejounte Murray.
Oh, there's absolutely, that's definitely
also part of the group, and I think this is actually even a bigger deal. Part of the group who was like okay with trading John Collins for nothing. Mm-hmm. Understanding it was a tax decision, but there were other people with money they could have traded to get under the tax. They chose John Collins, and they've been a significantly worse basketball team since they made that decision. They have they been back seasons under 500. You know, when John, like, say what you want about John, they were winning games. They were a 45-43 win team, but they made the decision. They willingly made the decision because they were like, we're trading 5 second-round picks for Saddiq Bey because we believe we're going to be a better team with Saddiq Bey at power forward position. I personally have no problem with, after 2 seasons of going small at the forward position, particularly that power forward position, the organization being like, we can go in a different direction here.
Yeah.
There are other stuff like inexperienced stuff with this front office. The first round pick, you get the number 1 overall pick. You can't get Alex Sarr in the door to drum up trade chatter. Like,
I mean,
it's just it's like you're letting some agent punk you here when you have the number 1 overall pick. Like I don't.
And perhaps that is an experience, and we don't really know how much that we'll never know all of the stuff there. But you're right; that doesn't scream like you're in total command of the situation. And look, the way that I would put it, and we can move on to something else if you want to. Like, if you're Tony Ressler, and look, people probably know I'm not the biggest. I don't think Tony's done a great job as the owner. He's not an all-time disaster. He's not Matt Ishbia. I get it, although Matt Ishbia spends money, but like. He's not that, but Tony Ressler has not done a great job as the owner, in my opinion. That's just me talking right now. I don't think he's been great. But if you're Tony Ressler and you are not convinced that Landry Fields is your guy as the top executive, you should fire him. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Like I'm not trying to get anybody fired. That's not my business. These are people with families. I don't like to do that. But like from a calculated, cold basketball sense, if you don't think you have your guy, go get your guy. And by the way, same with coach. Like I think I'm higher on Quinn than you, for example. But like if they felt that Quinn wasn't their guy, you have to fire the guy. Like I feel the same way about coaches and front office guys. Like you have to be comfortable and confident that you like not just are okay. And I am guilty of this too, where I'm like analytical and you try to like, okay, pros, cons, etc. It's like this guy's fine. And I'm guilty of that. But if you are in charge of the organization and you say you want to win at the highest level and you say you want to win championships, all these things, and you think somewhere deep down in your mind that Landry Fields is just fine as the general manager, you should change that. Like this is a competitive environment.
Brad, like I mean, the Hawks organization for the last 2 years have been stuck in neutral. Like they've made
they have been. Real... I will say I liked that they retooled and didn't push this last year. And I've said that 100 times. You don't have to agree with me. I liked this last year's general operating to not go crazy too quick. But I get that the feeling of the other side of that is like they haven't been speeding up either. So I got it. The year before that, I had a bigger issue with this last calendar year. They've kind of done what I would have done, like transactionally. I mean, like not every single move, but like I was okay personally not pushing because they needed to retool. They got younger, like they made a great trade, all these things. And I know that not everybody agrees with me. You don't have to agree with me. That's fine. For me, it was the year before that they didn't do anything.
Hold on, Brad.
This was brought to you by Monarch Money. I think we've all done this before, but at times in the past, I look at my bank account and wonder where all of my money went between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, and more. It's easy to lose track sometimes of your finances, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. Monarch Money is your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances, and Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It is instead a complete financial command center for you. You can track all of your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place, so you actually just stop managing your money and start building wealth instead. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized how much I was spending on food, honestly, each week, and it's just one example, but now I budget smarter and I save more in the process. Instead of juggling multiple apps for yourself, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long-term goals all in one place. And if you want to manage your money in conjunction with your partner, it can be smoother than ever as well. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, stay on the same page without any of the stress. Take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com. 50% off your first year with Monarch Money. The place to go is monarchmoney.com. The code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year.
There's problems with what I'm talking about with the indecision.
Oh, they do have a decision. They do wait too long to make decisions.
They wait too long to make decisions. And like
they do.
Probably I'll just leave it here with the biggest one. Clint Capella starting the last 2 seasons when it was pretty clear on the court, I'm talking exclusively on the court, that when Trae Young is next to Clint Capella, Trae Young is no longer an all-NBA caliber basketball player. Like it's 2 years of data of like Trae cannot get to his spots on offense. The offense stalls. And it's one of those decisions where it's like, it was really inexcusable that they signed him to the contract extension.
And by the way, you know that's bad when everyone knows that listens to this podcast. You know that I've defended Clint. I didn't like that extension. So what does that tell you?
but like, all right, the extension is bad. The extension is bad. We all understand this. It shouldn't hamper you from making the decision to be like, okay, we got to go in a different direction here because Capella does not fit what we're trying to do on either end of the floor anymore, and we have to go in another direction. We have to see if Okongwu is that player. Like, to me, like Okongwu's quote-unquote breakout when he finally started and played 30-plus minutes a night, something I've been, Brad, as you can attest, I've been arguing for the Hawks to do for the last, basically since the year after the conference finals run. Like, you have to give him a chance. Like, but going this half and a half route killed Okongwu's value, where he's only like, you get him on a good contract, that's great. But like, to me, I'm like, Okongwu's been this level of player. Like, this is not, to me, what he did this year is not new to me. When you elevate a player into a different role, like this ain't the 90s no more. Okay. These guys don't come in hungry being like, I want my, like, not everybody is Kobe Bryant. Some guys have to be elevated into the role and supported, similar to what you did with Jalen Johnson, by the way, because Jalen was also the type of guy who needed to be elevated and then supported by the coaching staff. I think Okongwu was the type of personality who needed to be elevated and then supported to maximize what he can do on the floor, because he's always been talented.
Well, you know what I'm going to say? They were going to do it last year, and then he got hurt. Like literally the next game. And I know I'm not excusing it all because I generally agree with you. By the way,
Okay.
I generally agree with you. Just to be 100% clear, I generally agree with you. I think they got a little bit unlucky with that because like they were finally going to do it, and then they couldn't. And I think they false started 2 or 3 times with a change over to Okongwu. And I'm not excusing them because they should have just traded Clint in back-to-back off seasons.
They should have just traded. That's the issue. It's like, but we can't take less on a trade. You've already crippled yourself financially with decisions you've made. Okay, that's understood, and you don't want to exacerbate the issue by taking on more bad money. I understand that, but at the same time, the decisions to not do anything just meant that your team steadily got worse.
Well, and sometimes you got to know your coach too. Like this is a rabbit hole we don't have to go down too far, but you got to know what your coach is going to do, and like you also got to know, like, look, Trey until basically, and still not even now, Trey loves Clint, and still does. So there's that, and you also got to know your coach. Like, I think if you wanted to Kongwu to start from day one this year, you need to get Clint off the roster. There was pretty much no way they were going to go into the season with Clint on the team and have Clint play 15 minutes a game from moment one. Now, eventually they were going to do that. We saw that. Eventually, in February, they did it. For about 2 weeks, they had Clint and Onyeka both healthy. Onyeka was playing 28, 30 minutes a game, and that's what should have happened the whole year probably. At the same time, you got to know your person, and that goes out back to the executive thing. Like, you got to know your organization. You got to know your coach. And I'm not defending. Like, look, I think Quinn did a pretty good job this year. Quinn did a lot of things I didn't like. But also, if you look at the overall with what Quinn had, their defense was okay in a way that, Dice gets a lot of credit for that too. But Quinn should get some credit for that. They did a pretty decent job defensively. Shot profile-wise, all those things. Now, did I hate some rotation decisions? Of course I did. But, like, I think going on just what they did as a team, and this is the argument in favor of Landry that people were giving me in the league, even like, hey, why are they firing the GM after they had a pretty good season? And I said that. Like, I said they had a pretty good season because they did. I believe that. But from a top-down overall perspective, if you're Tony Ressler, you probably aren't just cool with that. You know what I mean? I thought it was reasonable what they did, but also I do understand why people are not like pom-poms out for winning 40 games, even with the context, because they would have won more with Jaylen. Yes, they would have won 44, 45 with Jaylen, I think. And maybe that saves Landry's job. Honestly, does Landry get fired if Jaylen doesn't get hurt? I think probably not.
I think he still does for this reason.
He might have still.
I think he still gets. I think he still gets fired because he wasn't able to complete trades where they were on the leverage side. They had more leverage over the team and they weren't able to complete a trade.
Ooh, the bogey trade, man. I mean, it's a little thing, but having to send picks in the bogey trade is like one of those things that only the sickos care about. But having to attach picks to bogey to get Terrence Mann with 3 years left on a contract that's not very good is like a really, really weirdly bad transaction.
And Brad, they had to do that because they couldn't close the deal on the Brandon Ingram trade. Like, we'll stop. Like that's what happened. Like that's what happened. They were like, we couldn't get the deal done with Brandon Ingram. We got to pivot. Who wants bogey? Oh, we don't have another market for him.
No,
because he's literally been one of the worst players in the NBA this year. Well, 3 second rounds. Here we go. Get Terrence Mann. I mean, they painted themselves in the corner. They painted themselves in the corner because they couldn't complete a Brandon Ingram trade when they had the leverage over the Pelicans. They had the assets to get him, and they had the motivation to get a player. Because we want to talk big picture about the Hawks right now, going forward. They still need a secondary guy who can create offense for himself, even if Jaylen was healthy.
Not even secondary, like co-primary almost. Like,
co-primary is more.
I mean, more than I said. Well, it's secondary is good enough, but like, I do want to get to this before we run out of time. Let's talk about this because I heard ATL on 29. Everybody should listen to that show as we'll plug at the end too. But Tyler's one of the co-hosts, along with Kevin Schnard, Glenn Willis. Great show. I listen to it every time. And I was glad you guys talked about it. I haven't done this yet, really, on the show since the season ended, about how stark it was. Like, you know me, I'm in the weeds during the games, post game, and eventually you got to zoom out a little bit. We're zooming out right now. How stark it was in those 2 playing games. It's 2 games. I get it. It's 2 games, but they're playoff intensity games. Everybody's flying around. Everybody's trying their hardest. Rotations are slim. All those things. it was so obvious to me and everybody else, and you guys did it too, that Trey was the only person on the court that could create offense. Like the only one. As much as Okongwu took a huge step forward, he can't create offense. He's not that kind of player. He's really effective, really versatile, all those things. Ricochet is a rookie. Dyson can do it a little bit, but not in the way that you can in a playoff series. He can't. He's not at that level offensively yet. Graves is defensively. And does that mean anything for this? Like, yeah, it cost them a game. Like, it's one play-in game. They were probably going to lose to Cleveland. It is what it is. But it does tell you a little bit, and maybe remind is the better word. Remind everybody. Yeah, Jaylen would have helped, obviously. But Jaylen isn't some like dynamic offensive creator for himself. Like, he's better at it than everybody else on their roster is better than Trey. But they really do need more creation. And it's both obvious and also just worth saying out loud more. I'm talking to myself, really. It's like, hey, you know what they really need, man? A second guy who can really, really, really create offense. And they pieced it together. Jaylen would have helped. But it was just very, very stark.
You watch the Magic, it's like Paolo or Franz. At least you got two guys. Is their offense great? No, but at least literally somebody else.
They have no shooting at all, like zero. They have zero shooting.
But like the Magic, and then the Heat, it's like Tyler Herro, Andrew Wiggins, and then at certain points they were like, okay, we can get Trey isolated on Donovan Mitchell in an isolation situation because the Hawks weren't playing without any size for some reason to close.
And by the way, Miami's offense stinks. That's a bottom 10 offense in the league this year.
Not good. But Tyler Herro didn't have to do everything for them for them to get at least a decent shot on offense. If Trey wasn't literally setting the table, it was a wasted possession. Like, you might as well just run on the other end of the court because you weren't going to get anything on offense. And so, like, to me, it's do or die. And this is like, I think this goes back to my Fields point, where I think wrestler reasonably, you don't have to be a basketball guy to be like, hey, we got to get another guy, and we missed on Pascal Siakam somehow. We missed on Brandon Ingram somehow. We were quote unquote in on Kevin Durant talks, but I didn't hear any real rumors about the Hawks.
I mean, they really weren't. I mean, I know it was out there. They really weren't.
Like they at least they got their. I mean, it's one of those things where I can understand wrestler being like understanding. I got to get a real all-star, not some respected Dejounte Murray who actually did help in this way. Like, if Dejounte Murray was next to Dyson Daniels, the Hawks would be a pretty good team. But that's a topic for another day.
And the whole thing with Dejounte is that it could while they do need a second person that can create offense, Dejounte did it in the one way that you didn't really need with Trey. Like, it was like he had to have the ball. And Brandon Ingram, I'm not the biggest fan of Brandon Ingram. I wasn't enthusiastic about adding him, but I did say then he does not have to have the ball to do, like, he's still 6'8" and can shoot it and do all those things. Same thing with Pascal. He's not someone you just throw the ball to and get out of the way. Like, he's kind of an additive player.
But you know who would have helped and who was available and who is like truly one of the elite players in the game? Jimmy Butler. Like,
they were never going to do that. And by the way, I wouldn't either.
Brad,
I wouldn't either.
Brad, but if the point is to win some games and be title contender.
Yeah. No, the only reason I wouldn't have done that on Jimmy is that the Hawks aren't close enough. Like, I think with Jimmy and because of Jimmy's Jimminess. Like, with Jimmy, it's like you got a year and a half, and then Jimmy's going to go off the reservation, and they weren't ready. They weren't ready for it. They weren't.
Look, Brad, you put Trey and Jimmy together, and it's free throw line city.
It would have.
Brad, the Warriors weren't good enough.
But they are all in.
Jimmy.
But yeah, I'm with you. But they're also all in.
Brad,
two older stars.
That's the point. What I'm trying to make here. They've been half in, half out for these last couple. They were half in, half out when they traded for Dejounte Murray. Too scared to go after a real superstar in Donovan Mitchell. Too scared to me to do it. Like, to throw 5 first-round picks on the table to actually elevate your team. too scared to go after Rudy Gobert, who I wouldn't have done it for. But if Hawks had Rudy Gobert these last couple of years, they'd be a much better basketball team than they are right now. When elite players are available and you're the Atlanta Hawks, you have to go after them. Like, you can't be so scared that it won't work. Like, to me, it's like this, or you're not going to win a title. Like, you're just not. You're not going to win a title if Trey's your only guy. Like, that's just the reality of today's NBA. And guess what? The only basketball player who's good enough to be a one-man star for their team is Nikola Jokic. Everybody else needs a clear elite player next to their elite guy to elevate him. Like Trey, like I'm watching these, you watch the playing games, and my biggest takeaway is like, this is so hard for Trey. It is so hard for Trae Young to get good offense for himself. Nobody sets him up. No, and he has to be the downhill physical driver for this team at 6'1", 165 pounds, if that. Like, that's just not going to work. It's not going to work over an extended playoff series run. So they've got to figure something. They've got to put their chips on the table to me, like and get somebody who's at Trey level, who potentially might be a better player than Trey. And not be afraid to. Oh no, we gave up too much. Like, they can't. Too worried about, we won the trade, who lost the trade. How about worry about making the team better? And you have the opportunity to do that this offseason with the moves you made at the deadline to clear some space.
I was going to say that they actually did that. Ironically, at the deadline, they actually didn't make a we had to win the trade move. Because as well as I do, you disagree with it, and I did too to some degree. Fans were pissed about trading DeAndre Hunter. They were, in general. Not every fan, but a lot of fans were not very happy about that trade. And that was actually a good example of what you were talking about. Like, they made a move that was actually not a win the trade, win the press conference move.
And that move worked because they traded one rotation player for 3. And they literally just, and my whole point was they just needed bodies, and it didn't matter if they won the trade or not. Like, they just needed other, real NBA players.
So it was also for the future. It was also in theory to set up the next move. Now, even then, that day, I was like, look, if they don't take advantage of this coming summer, the grade gets worse on that trade. It was always an incomplete until now. And obviously, you've now changed regimes, so that's a bit of an interesting situation. But they did, in theory, look, I think everybody should have known, maybe I should have said it better. Tony Ressler's not a patient man. Like, they were never going to go into next year with the same, we'll just be hunky-dory, rolling the same roster back. But they're going to do something different. I don't know what's going to be, but it ain't going to be the same exact group. And I'm not saying they're going to trade any of their core guys. Not saying that. But they're going to change something. They're going to be pushing further in faster. I brought up on that show, I know you remember this. There was this whole debate 5 years ago now, about when they signed Gallo and Bogey that summer. And it was like, whoa, they're kind of speeding up faster than they were going to. And it was because Tony was like, hey, I'm not doing this anymore. We're not taking it slow anymore. We're going to speed it up a little bit.
And Brad, the mistake wasn't that they did that. The mistake was that they didn't have the young players to elevate, it kind of worked. It kind of worked anyway. I mean, it worked, but when they needed young guys to elevate into positions, and also they gave Capella that contract extension, which completely neutered a lot of things.
That was late. That didn't kick into later, but yeah.
That was one of the dumbest things they ever done. But they just didn't have the young. It was literally just Trey, John, and Kevin Herter who were the actual good young players. Like, DeAndre Hunter was. Well, I know people have these rose-tinted classes about Hunter's career in a Hawks uniform, but
even if you don't agree about that, the other original, of course, the original thing, Cam Reddish being bad was very, very harmful to everything that they were trying to build back then. We'd have to relitigate that, but that was obviously
those misses because they went all in on Hunter, and because they were like Reddish, and we were like, that's it, we're going to sell second round picks, development's off the table now, and it's killed them. And so a lot of their problems, lack of depth, lack of size, is because they weren't developing. It's good. The positives about Fields is that development was a real pressure point that they took advantage, that they were like, we are going to correct this error that we made in the previous regime to resolve. And
it worked.
And you see it not only in guys like Vit Krejci and Mo Gay, hopefully Kobe Buffkin if he can get healthy, but you also
Jalen
see
Johnson
and Jalen of course, but you also see it in like their G League and what they're doing down there in the G League, like even doing something like signing Jacob Toppin to a two-way, understanding we lack size, we lack positional size. Like, I don't know how good or bad he's going to be, but that's a useful like prospect to have in your organization, in your developmental organization that may be able to elevate to be somebody who, if Jalen goes out, I can put Jacob Toppin out there for 8 to 12 minutes, and we're not getting killed the way we were when we're trotting out, again, the Bays, the Hunters, the Richeches, like guys who are just physically not capable of playing the position. So like that's just kind of my, like, to say, I'm not saying like overall, like with Fields, he didn't do a bad job, but he didn't do a good enough job to keep one of the 30 best jobs in the NBA.
Yeah,
so
it's very reasonable. I'm like I said, I'm not trying to get anybody fired. I just think it's very reasonable to look at what they did and not be like, my only issue was like people that were like outraged at Landry Fields, like people like celebrating in the streets that he got fired. Like, I don't really understand that. Like, I don't think he's done anything that's like deplorably bad as the general manager. I just don't think that he did enough to like, he had to stay. Like there's a line there for me. It's like, I don't know. It is what it is, but
I just think I think in general, because like when the Hawks made the play, and a lot of Hawks fans weren't happy. And it's just the reality of like Hawks fans want to root for a winner,
and that's fine. I get it.
They've been stuck in this mediocrity rut for these last 4 years now since the conference finals run, and a lot of it. I mean, some of it has to do with injuries, but a lot of it has to do with not using every tool you have in the chamber to elevate your team, like not using your mid-level exception, not paying the tax. That's all.
That's a lot of that stuff that's ownership level, and that's why it's hard. It's hard for me.
That's ownership level, and like respect the wrestler. He did a mea culpa. They're using second round picks now. They're buying second round picks, Brad. It's been better and better, but there's still way too many and very recent instances of like they did not use the tools to improve the roster the last 2 seasons. No.
The mid-level was sitting there. Like this year, they were close to the tax, and like the tax shouldn't be a hard line, but it is for them for whatever reason. 2 years ago, they were 10 million away from the tax, and with the mid-level, and just didn't use it. And like you cannot explain that away. Like I'm sorry,
but that goes to executives just not having.
You got to talk them into it. But all that said, like, I'm saying
the 10 million part, like not using the mid, like that year. To me, that's just lack of ambition from the executive branch.
You gotta make your team better, and some of this is nerdy stuff, and I get it, but you have to exhaust your resources, and that's why a lot of us, you and I included, at the deadline, talked about like, hey, now they made these moves. What happens now? And that was post Jaylen injury. We knew the Jaylen thing was going to be what it was. The season, like you said earlier, kind of appropriately, was kind of over. The high ceiling outcomes were over when Jaylen went down. That's fair to say. You said it. I agree with you. Okay, fast forward to the summer. This was already going to be a very, very interesting and impactful summer for the Hawks before they fired Landry Fields. And now it's even more in the spotlight because they're either going to hire somebody who you've heard of, almost certainly, or they're not. And it's going to be Ansi or whatever they're going to do this summer. But between something we haven't talked about yet, maybe you and I'll talk about in a later podcast. You got the whole trade domino, and like it's out there. People are already writing about it. Trade, it's the extension, it's the trade stuff. I did see and hear, we'll talk about this later, that my friend Jake Fisher expressed confidence that Trey was going to stay and not be traded. Interesting. I don't know. We'll see. But like all the dominoes have to fit into place. And imagine the conversation that you and I are having if they trade Trey. Like they already need another guy on offense. Like, I'm sorry. I love Dyson. I love Zach. I love Jaylen. You know what they all need? Alvin Yeka. You know what they all need? A number one option to make it all work. Yeah. If Trey's not there, man, it doesn't work on offense. I'm sorry, everybody. Like, you don't have to love Trey. I'm not telling you Trey's the greatest player of all time. He's limited. He has flaws. But imagine if you were frustrated by the offense this year and trying to watch that team without Trey Young. Like, I don't know, man. It's not going to be a lot of fun. So we'll see. It's big summer.
And like to me, I look at this core. I'm like, if they could just get another guy next to Trey, and who knows, it could be somebody like a Jaden Ivey, Brad. You know, like just another, you know, a Jaylen Green type. But you know, Jaylen Green's not coming off the bench for the Hawks. But like, you know, it's just.
Oh, I don't think I want Jaylen Green. I understand what you're saying, though.
Can I take 2 minutes off for Jaylen Green talk just a little bit? Because like,
sure, we're almost done.
He might have the greatest first step I've ever seen from an NBA player. I mean, that's
really his entire game. Is that?
Right, but I'm like this. Yeah. I'm like, why doesn't he dominate games?
Because he's not good at anything else. What do you mean? He's not very good.
I mean, he's super athletic too, but so he's an interesting player. But like, you know, I just think the Hawks need to. It doesn't have to be a tier 1 superstar right now, but they do need to find somebody who can do something. So at least at the bare minimum, you're not asking Trey for 44 minutes. And
to use this example,
just do everything.
Yeah, to use this example, like it got to the point, and look, I like Caris Levert. Caris Levert is a very useful player. When he is your clear number 2 option in a postseason game, you have gone around the bend. You know what I mean? Caris is a good player. Caris is going to get a good contract from somebody this summer, whether it's the Hawks or somebody else. He's a 6th, 7th man. Good player. Good player. He can't be your second option in a playoff level game. And he was. He obviously was. Like, he's the only other guy that can do anything off the dribble. So, and obviously, again, we understand Jaylen was out, and Jaylen is already really good, and presumably will get even better. He's a young player, but Jalen's strengths is not. Jalen's not exactly a primary initiator offense. That's not what his game. Maybe he becomes that. I'm not closing the door on that on Jaylen.
Right, but the thing is, like, they tried that with Jaylen in the season, and
that's
it
what I'm
literally
saying.
Didn't work. And but when he's playing extra Trey, he's a near all-star caliber player. So I think there's going to have to be they have to understand they got to get somebody in the room.
Yeah,
and it could the guy could be already on the team, but like to me, I think one, they should be ambitious. They should shoot higher for an elite player, but if they can't get that, they need to.
And there are so many elite players available. Like, obviously, you know, as much as we've been skeptical of the front office and not being aggressive, like on the elite, on the actual stars that are available, like you got to get lucky too. Like you got to have.
Jimmy Butler was available. Karl Anthony Towns was available. Like
Towns is more available, but yeah, that's a hey. By the way, on both those fronts, I'm not excuse. I can guarantee you basically have to be in writing almost from the ownership level. We're going to pay the tax, or you can't acquire those guys. They make too much money.
That is fair.
So, but you know, and this summer, people are already asking me. I'm sure you're not surprised. People are already asking me about Giannis and KD, and I know your project is Zion. We'll talk about that at a later date when we're not an hour into the podcast. I know you're all in on the Zion train. I get it. By the way, I understand it. I'm not all in like you, but I do understand it. He's a good player. But anyway, there's the big names, but like even more practically, you can use okay. It won't be that level of player, but like you could use the flexibility that you created with the Hunter trade and a great extension for Jaylen. You have like $40 million right now under the tax lines. Even if you want to give Tony the pass to not even pay the tax, you can make a trade for a really good player and not go into the tax. It is very possible this summer, even while keeping Trey and keeping Jaylen and keeping everybody. You can do that. It won't be easy, but you can do it. So I don't know, man. It's a big summer, but I do think part of the grading on a curve thing that I will have raised my hand. I did this year to be like, hey, they won 40 games with Jaylen playing half the season. Like that's not as far as the team itself, like just being practical about what the team actually was, they did a pretty good job. But that's a different conversation than what the front office is. Like you're evaluating the team versus you're evaluating what the team could have been. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And like to me, I think this front office was evaluated over the past 2 years, 2+ years. Then
I mean, Travis didn't leave until like January, but
But
Travis's run as the president effectively ended the day the Murray trade happened, which I believe was like June 30th, July 1st, something like that, of almost 3 years ago. So basically it's been 34 months of whatever the Landry plus Kyle plus Nick Ressler, that whole thing. And only a year of that was Auntie Sala, who I think, again, who's now the number one currently. So he's the only guy that's new in the last year, interestingly enough. Yeah, I'm with you. It wasn't like in general, you shouldn't be evaluating a front office on a year-to-year basis. It's all about big picture and individual moves matter. You want to analyze them, but it's got to be part of a multi-year, multifaceted plan. And Tony didn't like the plan, and he might be right. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm actually kind of excited to see what they're going to do because, as well as I do, Tyler, every single one of these, here's the starting lineup for the Hawks tweets that I see. It's like these, and it's always the same. And they do. It's interesting because they do have their starting five, right? They have Trey, Dyson, Zach, Jaylen, Onyeka. If you're an Onyeka believer, and it's like in the world of social media, you only need five guys. So it doesn't actually matter who the sixth guy is, who the seventh guy is, who the eighth guy is. It's just like, how's your starting five look?
And that's why the Hawks have been in where they're at, and that's why the Rockets are where they're at right now. Who cares what the starting five is?
You do need depth.
They got 8 to 10 starter caliber players, and they just throw them out there every night. And they won 50 some odd games. I mean,
you can win a lot of games doing that. You can win a lot of games doing that. You really can.
Now, and that's the route the Hawks could take. I will just say, there's a cap ceiling on if you don't really have another guy next to your guy.
Well, they don't even have one guy, in my opinion, on Houston. That is the prototypical regular season team where, to your point, they got 9 or 10 guys, but they don't have a single top 25 offensive player in the league on their team. Maybe you could say Şengün is that, but it's and they're good defensively and they win a lot of games. So look, I'm not saying you wouldn't trade with the Rockets right now. They just won 50 games. That's a good team. You haven't won 50 games in a while here in Atlanta, but there is a give and take there. So I don't know what you want to do. And I'm not we agree on this as much as I defend Trey all the time. Honestly, I think Trey is vastly underrated now. I really do. But if Trey is the only guy on your team that is at that level offensively, you probably aren't going to win the championship. He needs someone that's basically either close to his level or at his level or above his level with him, if we're being 100% honest. So if that's your goal, and if your goal is to win 50 games and be a top 4 seed in the East, you could probably do that with Trey as your main guy.
Oh yeah, you signed Ty Jerome in this offseason. You signed a backup center, Luke Cornett, Steven Adams, somebody like that.
Steven Adams, sign me up.
And then you sign another shooter. Yeah, that's a 50
no,
plus. Probably.
I said this. I said this.
No joke. I'm not joking here.
Oh, I know. I mean, we were talking about
game.
You and I didn't talk about it, but I kind of slipped it in there in the back half of the podcast earlier this week. I was like, look, if you look at the East, there's 2 teams this year that were legitimately really, really good. And if you want to tell me the Hawks again, I didn't say as is. I said with a couple of moves, the Hawks could be the 3 seed next year. And that wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Now, again, they have to add, and that's not saying add Giannis. That's saying 2 more good players added, and they could be a 48-51 team next year, be right there. But is that what you want to do, or do you want to swing and try to be a tier above that with more risk? I don't know.
We'll talk about it later. But that might be something you have to do to get the guy, to show the formula in order to get the guy.
Yeah, but players, by the way,
it could be this
players
year.
Players that you have to trade for, especially the top gun guys. It's very rare that a team that they don't want to proactively go to trades for somebody like that. You have to be on their list almost always. Not every time, but almost always. You have to be on their list on their list. So let's just say Giannis, for example, we'll speculate wildly at the end of the podcast. Let's say Giannis says, I want to get out of Milwaukee. Atlanta ain't gonna be on his list, man. I'm sorry.
And the Hawks, the thing about trading for Giannis is the Hawks don't have the assets to get him while also being a contender.
That's the other thing. You have to trade stuff for good players. They have to. By the way, you have to trade. I promise you, a player like Giannis, you could debate it on Zion or whatever, or KD at his age. If you're talking about Giannis,
it's the whole boat.
people are like, oh, well, we can't trade this guy. I'm like, guys,
no, that doesn't. The only player who's not tradable is Trey. Like, that's it. And then you got to figure it out, the rest out later. But
yeah,
oh, great. We're going to be the Milwaukee Bucks now, with Trey and Giannis and nobody else. That's why I'm like, Zion, lowest value of his career. I know he wants to be here. I have it on good authority that Zion would like to play for the Atlanta Hawks.
Well, I mean, go back to lottery night in the little
lottery
night. The tap of the sign. No, I mean, the Giannis thing, and we'll sign off. But yeah, I mean, I won't pick on anybody individually. I saw a fake internet trade for Giannis on the Hawks, and it was like on Yeka and picks, and I'm like, guys, that is not going to get it done. I can assure you, that's not going to get it done. It's going to cost
Jaylen, Reese Shea, multiple picks, Kobe Buffkin.
It would be a lot.
You're hoping you're going to try to keep Dyson Daniels. Like, that's if that probably doesn't get it done. By the way,
it costs a lot. Anyway, we'll save that for later. I'll bring you back on, obviously, like we always would. But we got to talk about the draft. We got to talk more about Zion because I know that's the guy you want. We got to hit on other things. So we've gone an hour as we always would on the podcast. I have a list of things we didn't get to, but that's the nature of the beast. In the meantime, two more things we have to get to. Number one, your now world famous recommendations, and number two, plug ATL 29 one more time.
All right, recommendations. Anime recommendations.
You've got something. You always got something. You're tweeting about. You're skeeting about something all the time. Whatever you got.
Yeah. I was skeeting about something. It's early in the season. Fire Force is out.
There you go.
Season. Watch that. It's really good. But I'm playing a lot of video games right now, so I'm back on video game mode. Interesting enough, and like I recommend Blueprints. Ending made me cry and call my mother, so I thought it was a great game. But another game I'm currently trying out is Expedition 33. I think it came out today. I'm not sure, but it came out relatively recently. Like, it's brand's hot off the presses new, so I'm playing it right now. And I haven't actually started yet, but like I'm interested in that setting and that narrative to figure out what's going on. But those are probably my recs. I'll have more. If you want more anime recs, hit me up on Blue Sky and not 2x4 over there. And I'll shoot them off for you guys for the current season. But I'm kind of behind on my anime right now.
I see every once in a while you will say something that I have no idea we're talking about, and I'm like, all right, it's either wrestling or it's a recommendation.
Oh, wrestling. I can't recommend wrestling because WrestleMania was actually not that good, but
I saw a lot of all caps tweets from you. That's all. Oh, sorry, not skeets from you.
Raw on Netflix though. This last week was hype. But if you don't know what the story is, you're probably going to be lost. So I don't know. It's tough to recommend wrestling, but like I enjoy it.
I know. I used to watch it like 20 years ago. I'm out on it mostly, but hey, I'm not anti. I just don't watch it anymore. It is what it is. And I know I said it. ATL on 29.
ATL on 29, please.
It's a podcast. It's really good. It's about basketball. Tyler, Kevin, Glenn, and you guys semi-regularly. Not as often as this show because I have to do a lot of podcasts. But you guys are pretty regular. You guys do podcasts,
and we do it for the love of the game. So
that's right.
It's
no ad reads.
It's pure hoop talk for the love of the game. That's why it's only 40 minutes though, because we we're not getting paid
because Zoom cuts off at 40 minutes. I've been on that show.
Yeah.
It is what it is. All right. Well, thank you, sir, for doing this. I have a list of things when you come back, and we'll do it sooner rather than later because the draft's coming. The draft's like less than 2 months away. Probably got 2 picks to talk about. Colin Murray Boyles, your guy. If we can get him, they can get him. All right. Plenty more to come. Subscribe to this podcast. Check out ATL 29. Follow Tyler, and we appreciate everybody listening to the podcast as always. We'll see you all next time.